Would you stand and join me in the call to worship, please? People of God, who do you come to worship? We come to worship the one true God. How will you worship? Not with words alone, but by living lives of justice and love. Come, you who belong to God. Come and abide in God's tent and in God's heart, now and forever. Our opening hymn, number 33 in the hymnal, or lyrics on the screen behind me, Immortal, Invisible, God Only Wise. Please remain standing as we sing. Welcome to dress rehearsal. Lord, show me your way. I invite you into a moment of silence, after which we'll remain seated as we sing Cornerstone. A moment for you to share your joys, your concerns with God, to experience God's presence, to just sit in the silence. We're in the second chapter of the Gospel of John. Again, early in the life and ministry of Jesus, John follows a slightly different sequence of events than Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We've walked through early events in the life of Jesus the last several weeks. John has a slightly different schedule of how those things happen. He writes, "On the third day there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, 'They have no wine.' And Jesus said to her, 'Woman, what concern is that to me and to you? My hour has not yet come.' His mother said to the servants, 'Do whatever he tells you.' Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, 'Fill the jars with water.' And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, 'Now draw some out and take it to the person in charge of the banquet.' So they took it. When the person in charge tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, that person called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went to Capernaum with his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and they remained there a few days. So just to start, I want to get a couple of things kind of out of the way, kind of off my chest. This is something that's been bothering me recently, mostly in the news and especially on the radio, as I've listened, done a lot of listening on the radio on this topic for this week, and I would just like to point out something for you. These are Bengals, and these are the Bengals. Okay, can we go back over that again, Adam? Bengals. Bangles. Walk like an Egyptian for those of us that are old enough. Okay? This afternoon, we're playing the Bengals, not the Bengals. So, tell your people at lunch today how important we discuss things in church today. Okay, corrections and addendums. Sometimes these are pointed out to me, sometimes I realize them myself. Often on the drive home I go like, that wasn't quite right, Kevin, but you said it. Or sometimes I watch the recording and I go like, oh, I said that, that was not accurate. First of all, I was reminded when I got home that Coda won all 3 of the Academy Awards for which it was nominated. I will not look in the direction of the person that corrected me on this, but including Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor for the gentleman who played the father, I didn't mention this, I don't think, one of the cool things about that movie is they employed actors who were deaf to play the characters who were deaf, and so the lead act, the father, was very intense performance. I failed to mention, and I meant to, that Capernaum, which is the town we talked about last week, is sometimes spelled with an F. And I looked at some old signs. One of the signs as we walked into the ruins of Capernaum, and I was like, oh yeah, sometimes it's spelled with an F. Why? The original, probably Hebrew name was probably Kafar Nahum. And in my amount of Hebrew, which means I read this in a book somewhere, Kafar means village, and then Nahum is the name of someone's name. So Kafar Nahum, when it gets translated into other languages, and an F looks like a P and a PH, and it was right. So we get to Capernaum as modern pronunciation, but the original pronunciation was probably Kafar Nahum. Tiberias, a town we also talked about last week, which was built around 20 AD by King Herod, named after the emperor. That area, the village maybe that was there beforehand or somewhere in that area, is sometimes called Emmaus. So if you're familiar with the story in Luke, post-resurrection appearance, Jesus is on the road. Two of his disciples are on the road to Emmaus. They're walking to this town, this Tiberias. So that just links that in. And here's one that I just caught as I was listening to the recording. Jesus was not born in Nazareth, which Kevin said last week. So I said Jesus was born and raised in Nazareth, and he was not. He was born in Bethlehem, raised in Nazareth. Oh, I forgot to write one down. I also tried to make a joke about how Jesus lived in Peter's basement. It wasn't funny. It also just sounded like I meant that on purpose. Peter didn't have a basement. Nobody had a basement. They barely had a house, right? I mean, these were teeny tiny little spaces. But did Jesus stay with Peter in Capernaum? Probably. Okay, so it was not Peter's basement, with his own entrance out the back, right? So Peter didn't know, and he was there, and then they'd be like, when did you get home last night, Jesus? And Jesus was like, you're not the boss of me. That will be the correction for next week, when I have to say Jesus and Peter did not have that conversation. Sometime in mid-December, in our post-COVID world, as people are moving on to get back to kind of normal things, Melody and I went to her company business party. And her company is called CBiz, C-B-I-Z. It used to stand for Century Business Solutions, something. Anyway, they just shortened it to just CBiz. If you drive down 47th Street on the plaza, there's a big building with a big green sign on the top that says CBiz and then MHM. So it's a pretty big party. How many people work? I meant you asked this before. How many people work at your 500? Holy cow! I didn't know it was that many. So 500 people, and her division is not that big, but there's an accounting firm that is also part of the company. So big Christmas party. They had it at Boulevard Brewery in the big event space they have down there, which is pretty nice. It's a cool place, and especially at night. And it's we get kind of dressed up, and things are loud. I don't know why they always want really loud, just loud. And I was mentioning to somebody, and they were like, "Oh, people that run restaurants want it to be loud, so it feels exciting." Well, so anyway, it was loud. Lots of people there. Everybody could bring a guest. So theoretically, there are 1,000 people maybe, and there weren't, but there were several hundred. And we got there fairly early. We made the conscious decision to not eat dinner. Party started at 6 or 7 or something. We're not far from there. We live 20 minutes south of here, so we get across the river, 15-minute drive. So we get down there, and as we walk in the door, we see the food table, and it's Jack Stack Barbecue set up. And go to the bar, and then we run into several people that Mel works with, some of whom I haven't seen for a very long time, because Christmas parties is when we see them. And so we talked, and as we were talking, people were walking by with plates full of barbecue and baked beans and potatoes, and then there's a thing of cookies and brownies, and we're like, and we hadn't eaten dinner, but we're talking, and we finally decide, I don't know, at least an hour and a half go by, we finally decide we're going to go to the food table, and the food is gone. Gone. Zero. Not even like empty plates where there used to be barbecue. Gone. Cookies. Cookies are left. And we hadn't had dinner, and maybe one of us had had a glass of wine, and cookies, right? So you're kind of like a little unsteady, and not me. So we went and found Melody's boss and told her, "Hey, the food is gone." And she made like this gesture finger to one of the employees, and they went back in the kitchen, and about 10 minutes later they came out. You know what they came out with? Lobster and steak and baked potatoes. And I'm making all this up. Because that did not happen. The nice people from Jack Stack who were there catering had looks on their faces like, if one more person tells us the food is gone, we're going to kill somebody. I mean, they were hiding. There was such intense, they were like, somebody had gone at them. We found out later that perhaps some of the employees invited more than one guest. They were just like, "Hey, my company's having a party, you should come." And they hit the food table pretty hard. So we didn't stay much longer. We tried to decide whether we should go to Town Topic and get something to eat, or just drive the 15 minutes home. So we went back home. Wouldn't that have been cool if there had been steak and lobster? And we would have been like, we waited, and y'all didn't. We were at a wedding probably 10 years ago, definitely pre-COVID, on New Year's Eve. Big Catholic wedding that happened in late afternoon. And then there was a break of a couple of hours, and then this reception down in Power and Light District. Now, you should know that Melody and I have not left the house on New Year's Eve since the year 2000 because of Y2K, right? Somebody remembers that. That was just after the Bengals. Some of you will just tell you about it later. We just stay home. Melody, we're in our pajamas by 9 o'clock. There's football this year, right? So So that was literally in the last 22 years, the only time that we have gone anywhere on New Year's Eve, maybe somebody comes over to our house, was we went to this wedding. We went to the wedding and we really didn't know what to expect. New Year's Eve, nice dinner, lovely sit-down dinner. They did all the normal kind of wedding-y stuff, the throwing the bouquet and all the stuff. Band comes up, live band. It was fantastic entertainment, and the evening just seems to move on and on and on. And we haven't been out we don't go out like that. So we were just hanging out, wondering what was happening. It was cold. We kept looking at our watches. Maybe we should go. The roads are crazy. It's a New Year's Eve, and if I remember this precisely, I think it was 11 o'clock. This actually did happen. They brought out the second round of food. We had this nice, lovely sit-down dinner. At 11 o'clock, they brought out cheeseburgers and French fries. Is that right? Yeah. And we were like, oh my gosh. And the excitement of the people at that party who had had several glasses of wine by that point, it was a New Year's Eve miracle. People were like, they just brought out more food. They just brought out cheeseburgers. Can you believe this? And we were all kind of looking around like, is that just for the wedding party? Or then they're because they didn't bring them to the tables, they're just putting them out on the thing. And there's this excitement that runs through the crowd like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, there are cheeseburgers. And we were like, this is so cool. I've never seen anything like this in my life. That really did happen. So what happened? The only thing we know from this story is that Jesus knew what happened. Jesus' mother knew what happened. The steward, the head of the banquet, there's actually a position in the ancient world, and it was like the wedding coordinator. In the ancient world, there was a person, probably a man, who was in charge of the wedding banquet. And he had a much bigger job than bringing out cheeseburgers at 11 o'clock, because a wedding banquet in the ancient world lasted for up to a week. A week, multiple days of steak and barbecue and cheeseburgers and fries. So where are we? We are in Cana of Galilee. There are several different possible locations for the actual village of Cana, and some of them, when you look at the Hebrew maps and stuff, say, guess what? Kafar, village of Cana. I poked around to figure out exactly what that word means, and there's so many different definitions for the word Cana. Some of them have to do with reeds, like, was it Kafar, the village of reeds? Was it someone's name? It's not Cain from Cain and Abel. Anyway, we don't really know. But here we are in the northern part of Israel. This is our continuation through Holy Land 101. Jerusalem is about here, Dead Sea. So we're in the northern part. Last week we were in Capernaum, which is up there on the tip of the Sea of Galilee. And right about where the words Sea of Galilee are, it would have been the city Tiberias or Emmaus that I talked about a lot last time. We're back there in the middle. See how close together Nazareth and Cana are? Less than 10 miles. Less than 10 miles. Jesus and his mother, this is the only time in the Gospel of John she's mentioned until the crucifixion, and she's never named. Jesus and his mother have gone to a wedding in Cana of Galilee. If he was in Nazareth at the time, they walked. Right? Come on, Mom. We're going to the wedding of, we're not sure who. So what else do we have here? Here is, when we're there in just a few weeks. You zoomed in for me, thanks. Here is the church that is on the traditional site of the turning water into wine. This is a Franciscan church. We will visit this church. Is this the exact spot it happened? Yeah, maybe. Maybe not. Is this the right village? Yeah, maybe. Maybe not. Church tradition is that this is the Cana mentioned in the Bible, and for centuries there have been worship on this site who think that this is where it was, and there's a good chance there was. We can get into that. How do they know? We can talk about some other time. Here is a thing that they found that they have down in the basement. I just put this in because I think it's really funny, and I don't think you can read it. The sign says, "This way to the jar." So this is the jar. This is the, so for all the people that are visiting, this is the stone jar that was found in the ruins of this village, or that as they dug in this village, that may have been the type of water container. Problem is the water, it says it held 20 to 30 gallons. I'm not sure that could hold 20 or 30 gallons, but that is a form of a container they might have kept water in. Here's some more containers, water jars. These are stone water jars. These are in a museum in Jerusalem. And there are 6 of them just because there were 6 of them in the story. I think that's why they're grouped together like that. And those are a little smaller than could have held 20 to 30 gallons, but it's cool. These are made from a single block of stone. I didn't even know. Like they mentioned a lathe, turning the stone on a lathe, and then my brain hurts, like, to even figure out how somebody 2,000 years ago would have made that out of each of those out of a single block of stone. But to get an idea of what we're talking about, what does 25 gallons of liquid look like? These are modern day 25-gallon barrels. So add all that stuff together. They were stone jars. They held 20 to 30 gallons apiece. They were that big, right? And they were used for purification. So at the wedding feast, it would have been necessary and tradition for there to be lots of hand washing. And this would have happened in any kind of meal that Jewish people practiced. It was part of their religious practice, part of their rituals. It was also just part of hygiene, right? It was not a very clean part of the world. They lived really hard lives and were dusty and dirty. And there's this scene at the end of John where Jesus washes their feet, which was the job of a servant, and would have been very unpleasant. Don't even think about that. So these stone jars would have had water in them that the crowd of people who had gathered for the week-long wedding celebration would have used to wash in. Now, I was thinking about that this morning. Were they just like camped out there for 7 days? Probably not. They were probably farmers or tradespeople, and they had to go home and feed the animals. They were back and forth. They probably lived within a block or not far from the party. So the party was just kind of going on, and they would, I would guess, come and go as they could. Weddings in the ancient world. There's a tradition amongst our Jewish brothers and sisters, I don't know if it continues or not, that weddings were on Tuesdays. Tuesdays. Surprised you, didn't I? Why? And what was the opening words of this text? On the third day. Well, we're Christians, so we hear on the third day after the crucifixion. Oh, it's a reference to crucifixion. Maybe. On the third day, Tuesday. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Why Tuesday? In the creation story, day 3 is the only time that God says it was good twice. All the other days are good. Tuesday is very good. I don't know why. So the tradition in the ancient world was that weddings were on a Tuesday. They were often in the fall after the harvest, when the temperatures would have been more comfortable to sit around after dinner and enjoy wine, your company of your friends and your family, and the harvest would have been done, right? Those of you that do that kind of work would understand. A wedding would normally take, after a period of betrothal of 6 months to a year. The wedding would have been arranged by the parents of the bride and the groom. And the actual ceremony was very there wasn't a lot to the actual ceremony. There was more to the process. So I couldn't find this anywhere specifically in any of the research, but it appears that at least the day would have been chosen, but the time was left up in the air, and the bride would just be waiting. And she would have 10 of her friends, the bridesmaids. They were hanging out with her, and if you know some of the parables in the Gospel of Matthew specifically, they're just waiting, because the groom arrives when the groom is ready. When the wedding day finally arrived, the bridegroom would dress himself in festive garments, wearing a crown of gold or silver or flowers. He would proceed with his friend and other attendants from an unknown place at an unknown time to the bride's father's house. And then when he arrived, there would be these formal words that were said, and he would take her back to his house, or more likely to his father's house. These people are very poor. Maybe he built an extra room onto the side of his father's house. Maybe they're just going to share. And so there would be this procession back through town or to another town. I don't know how all that worked. The groom taking the bride back to his home. Again, there were words spoken. There's some brief ceremony that went on. And then the party started. The doors were shut in the father's house. The doors were shut and the feast began with great dancing and celebration lasting 7 days at the bridegroom's house, or the groom's house, or the father's. All guests were given special garments, clothing of festivity. The bridegroom and bride were treated as king and queen. They also wore garments of celebration and did no work as they would watch the festivity, drink wine, and join in the dancing. The ruler of the feast was responsible for the preparation. So that was the person that Jesus' mother said, hey, we ran out of wine, the ruler of the feast. Hey, Jesus, why don't you do something about that? So that's the setting. That's the context. It's very different from what we experience in these days. But think about that long period of time. Now, one scholar points out that part of this miracle may have to do with it being later, and that one of the expectations at the time was that the kind of officials and dignitaries of the town would be invited, and they would be obligated to come, but they weren't really friends or family, so they would probably stay for a little while, a couple of days, and then go back about their business. And the tradition was you serve the good stuff. The text says, keep the cheap stuff till everybody's drunk. Part of the tradition was you serve the good stuff to the rich people that were there, the rich and the powerful people. You didn't want to embarrass yourself. So the best food, the best wine, the best things would happen at the beginning, the first few days, or wherever that time period was, when the mayor was there, when the rabbi was there, when your cousins from Albuquerque were there, right? And then imagine that as time went by, who would be left to continue to celebrate? Your friends, your family, the people that you were really close to, and they would understand when you had to get the cheap wine out. But Jesus uses the best. Is that part of the interpretation of this text? So what does this mean? And here's a couple of options and ways for you to think about it, or just enjoy the richness of the story. Cana of Galilee is really only mentioned a couple of times in any of the Gospels. It's only in the Gospel of John. So there's this story at the beginning of chapter 2. There's a reference that Nathanael, one of the disciples, is from Cana of Galilee. That's another sermon. We talked about it at Sunday school for a minute, but Cana of Galilee shows up again at the end of the 4th chapter, which is kind of what the biblical scholars call an inclusio, which means there's a story here, and then stuff happens, and there's a story here, and they're similar. And in the ancient world where all this would be read aloud, it would be that would kind of be a chapter, or right? These three chapters in John kind of would feel like a completion. Here's the story. It says, then Jesus came again to Cana in Galilee, where he had changed the water into wine. Now there was a royal official whose son lay ill in Capernaum. We know that Jesus has been healing people in Capernaum in the other Gospels. When the royal official heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went and begged him to come and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. The official said to him, Sir, come down before my little boy dies. Jesus said to him, Go, your son will live. The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and started on his way. As he was going down, his slaves met him and told him that his child was alive. So he asked them the hour when he began to recover, and they said to him, Yesterday at 1 in the afternoon. The father realized that this was the hour when Jesus had said to him, Your son will live. So he himself believed along with his household. Now this was the second sign that Jesus did after coming. from Judea to Galilee. The first sign, the water into wine in Cana of Galilee. The second sign, the healing of an official's son who lives very far away in Cana of Galilee. I wish I was really smart and wise and could tell you why Cana of Galilee, but I can't. I don't know. I didn't read anybody who could answer that question. I'll keep asking it. But what did occur to me is that I looked at those two texts and at other miracles, signs in the Gospel of John. Many of them had one thing in common, and that Jesus does not physically touch or is even physically present when something happens. His mother says, Jesus, we're out of wine. He says, go fill up the water things. The official says to him, Jesus, my son is dying. Would you heal him? He's been healed. There's a man who's been lying next to a pool in Jerusalem, another place that we'll visit in a few weeks. He'd been lying there for 38 years, and they believed that if they went into the water when the water was stirred, bubbled, that they would be healed. And he has lain there for the whole time, and he's never been able to be the first one in the water. And Jesus said to him, stand up, take up your mat, and walk. His words. Lazarus is dead. Lazarus has been dead for days. People have come to him. Jesus, come here. Your friend Lazarus is dying. Come save him. He is in the tomb. He has been dead. Jesus stands outside of the tomb. They move the stone away, and he says, Lazarus, come out. His words, not his physical presence necessarily. The opening prologue of John says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. By the time this gospel is written, 60 years, perhaps 70 years have passed since Jesus was present on the earth. Were Jesus' words still powerful? Did you have to have the physical body of Jesus present in order for there to be healing? Did you have to have the physical body of Jesus present for the water to be turned into wine, for the dead to be raised? Or did you just have to have the Word? Is that what this parable means? Or maybe I'm making it much too complicated, and maybe the whole purpose, the whole moral of this story is that God really likes a party. Because Jesus hangs out with people all the time, with people he wouldn't expect him to hang out with. There are meals, and there are meals, and there are parables about banquets, and what's heaven going to be like? It's going to be like a banquet. You live in a world where you don't know what you're going to eat the next day. What's going to happen? Sickness, death. Oh man. It's going to be like a banquet. It's going to be a party. It's going to be a party that goes on and on and on. Everything eventually in life will run out, including life itself. But the thing that is to come is even better than what we've already experienced. It happened on the third day. Was that a Sunday? Was that a Tuesday? Or a Friday or a Wednesday? No one expected it, but in the presence of Jesus, new life abounds. The sick are healed, the dead are raised, water is turned to wine, and the party continues. Thanks be to God. Let us pray. O God, distant yet near, we gather as witnesses to your promise that if we seek you with all our hearts, we will find you. Be among us this day. Hear the confessions of our mouths and the yearnings of our hearts. Help us change the narrowness of our vision and the pettiness of our living. Make us new again with your holy grace. Grant us the maturity to accept your many gifts in humility and to use them with faithfulness. Grant to us your Spirit, that our worship may have integrity and energy, witnessing to your holy presence in our lives. We praise and give thanks to you, eternal presence. Through Jesus Christ we pray, the one who taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven. A few announcements. I see, when I came in this morning, I've already seen some donations. So we've been doing Super Bowl, SOUPER, Super Bowl of Caring for a number of years. Here, they've kind of changed their branding and their title. They're calling it Tackle Hunger Challenge because they realize people are not just hungry in February. So they're doing more of an annual thing, but this is still their big fundraiser and gathering of supplies. So right over there in the corner are some bins for you to bring in canned goods. We'll get those to the treasure chest or to the agency in Tracy. And I know it's a little farther to haul them in, but man, I love the idea that they're right there, that they're in worship with us, that you bring those gifts and we can see and experience those. So we're going to gather those for the next couple of weeks. Wednesday night, February starts already. February 1st, Wednesday, men's dinner at 6:30. Next Sunday is our fellowship potluck. Bring some food to share. That's a great picture. That's actually us. I think somebody made that sound. Looks good. And then on the 7th, a week from Tuesday night, the women's, females creating friendship groups. We'll get back to going out to dinner. 6:30, meet at the church. And then a check-in with my Holy Land people tomorrow night. Work okay? 7 o'clock. I was going to email y'all, and I kept forgetting to, and I was like, I've looked them each in the eye, and I think that we know. So we'll plan on being here tomorrow night at 7 to get ready for our trip to the Holy Land. We leave on the 7th. And there's updated church directories out on the high top table if you'd like to take one. It's just the addresses and phone numbers and stuff. So hopefully you have pictures at home. Our communion hymn will remain seated as we sing is Glorify Thy Name, number 9 in the hymnal. We'll sing all 3 verses.
As we gather at this table today to break the bread and drink the cup, let it remind us that through Jesus' teachings, we too shall be served with good wine. Lord, be with each of us today, and especially those that can't be here. Amen.
we sing hymn number 100. I'm talking slow while Peggy changes her music over Thou Art Worthy. Let's sing together. And it dwelt among us, not for a brief period of time in ancient Israel, for just a brief number of years. The Word became flesh and came into this world. The Word, the love of God, the teachings, the wisdom of God can remain with us to this day and forever. And that banquet waits for us as well. We pray these things in the name of the risen Christ and through the power of the Holy Spirit. Go in peace. May the grace of Christ our Savior and the love of God our Father and the fellowship of the Spirit be with us forevermore. Congratulations to our friend Blaine, graduating from welding school. Everybody say hi. So, that's all. See you. Go Chiefs.